Fall in, Polk County. This is today's veteran. Hello and welcome, and on behalf of everyone at the Polk County Office of Veteran Services, thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Kate West, and on this installment of Today's Veteran, we'll chat with Patrick Schweickhart and Kiertsen Downs of the Student Veterans Association at the University of South Florida in Tampa. And later, during our War Story segment, we will hear from American Legion member Tim Scheillerd. Now stand by for your sit rep, Polk County, and prepare to copy. Let's jump right into the continuing story that we update you on every month concerning the VA Claims Initiative to reduce backlogs. The Department of Veterans Affairs has made significant progress in reducing the backlog of disability compensation claims, down 34% from 611,000 in March to just over 400,000 presently. Staff at regional VA offices have begun by focusing on the oldest claims first. Since April, almost 500,000 claims that were more than a year old have been processed, decreasing the pileup of these older claims by 93%. Benefits were awarded in almost 3/4 of the decisions, which remains on par with historical averages. The accuracy of disability ratings has improved, up 3 points to 96.7% since last December. A mandatory 20 hours of overtime per month has been initiated for all claims processors in an effort to make more headway. And physicians will now help review medical evidence in order to speed up decisions. In the coming months, there will be continued focus on claims that have been pending the longest. Priority will then continue for claims from homeless veterans, those experiencing extreme financial hardship, the terminally ill, former prisoners of war, Medal of Honor recipients, and veterans filing fully developed claims. Filing a fully developed claim is the quickest way for veterans to receive a decision on a compensation claim.
In the recent past, we have spoken to a couple of individuals, President and Vice President of the University of South Florida Student Veterans Association, and they told us of a remarkable story of a young lady who was trying to raise awareness for not only their Student Veterans Association, but all Student Veterans Associations. And today in the studio, we welcome Kiertsen Downs and Patrick Schweickhart, who is with the USF Student Veterans Association. Welcome, Kiertsen, and welcome, Pat.
Thanks so much.
Again, when Ray was here, we talked about your journey, and we want to hear about that. And Pat, we want to hear about what's going on at the USF SVA currently. So Kiertsen, why don't you start off and tell us, both of you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to get where you are today.
Sure. Well, again, my name is Kiertsen Downs. I am a doctoral student at the University of South Florida. I'm in the Applied Anthropology department, where most of my work and my research focuses on veterans affairs and higher education policy. Specifically, I've been looking at student veterans and higher education and women veterans. I came to USF in 2011, and that's when I first found out about our peer-run Student Veterans Association on campus, and then ultimately ended up getting involved with the national organization, Student Veterans of America.
Okay. Pat, what about yourself?
I am a Bachelor of Arts in Criminology major. It's my senior year. I'm originally from Ohio. Moved here in 2011, started going to USF in spring of 2012. Spent 4 years of active duty in the Marine Corps and currently serving in the reserves. I am the event coordinator / guru of the USF SVA. I've done a multitude of different tasks for them, and that's where I'm currently at this point.
I recently did a little bit of research on SVA, and nationwide the statistics show that 85% of the members of the SVA, Student Veterans Association, are 24 years of age or older. Mm-hmm. They are 47% have families, and 27% are female. Mm-hmm. What do you think about those statistics as far as USF are concerned?
I think that they're probably comparable in nature. When you're looking at, we have around 2,000 student veterans and family members on campus. So that's an increasing number. Every year that number is getting bigger as we draw down troops from Iraq and Afghanistan. And this is the largest number of student veterans that we're seeing on campus since post-World War II era. And with our Student Veterans Association, what we're trying to do is really engage with that population, because looking at the statistics that you just gave, we are slightly different than your average set of college undergraduates. So we are a bit older, we have families, we have a lot going on when you transition out of the service, and the Student Veterans Association is really a vehicle that can be used to assist with that transition and really just provide social support and all-around fun. It's a big part of it.
Good, good. Well, let's get to your amazing summer and tell us a little bit about your trip and some of the events that happened.
Sure. On June 2nd, I started in San Francisco for a cross-country cycling trek, which ended up taking me all the way to Washington, D.C. I came in just under 3,800 miles. I think my total was about, I locked everything in my computer, maybe right around 3680, give or take. And my mother was with me, and she was the support vehicle, and also my friend Annie, who was a videographer. And the need for the support vehicle came into play because we sold sponsorships. So a lot of the funding, which I was able to raise over $50,000 in individual donations and also sponsorships, we sold advertising space and whatnot. And the support vehicle, as the campaign grew, really became a necessity for that cause. It originally started off 2 years as a personal endeavor with me just packing my bike with 30 pounds of gear and having this amazing personal experience of riding across the country. But as I became involved with this USF Student Veterans Association and also the national organization where I currently serve on their National Student Council, I saw the need to push a very important message. And that message is, we are here, we exist, this is what we do, and we want you to be involved.
How many bikes did you use, or how many tires did you go through? Or
Cannondale came on as a sponsor before I left for the trip, which was amazing, and they ended up doing an in-kind donation for 2 bikes. So I had the bike that I rode, and I also had a spare, which I actually became very attached to the one bike, so I barely even rode the second bike. And they were fully carbon, it was a fully carbon Cannondale bike. It was amazing. I went through 12 tubes all the way across. The state that I got the most flats in was Arkansas. Land
of opportunity, I think it's called.
I rode through 12 states, and I ended up passing through 3 different mountain ranges. So I hit the Sierra Nevadas, I hit the Rockies in Colorado, and I also came up through the East Coast and ended up hitting the Appalachians and moving over.
How scary was it coming down those mountain ranges?
Coming down was my favorite part. So I topped out at speeds of around 50 miles per hour. And my longest climb was 14 miles, and the descent was a 15-mile descent. So it was awesome.
Wow.
It was great.
That's great. Tell us about some of the people or organizations that you might have encountered.
Sure. So a big part of this trip in raising awareness was that I linked up with other student veterans associations as I rode across the country. And I also went to several different VFW posts, Veterans of Foreign Wars posts. The VFW was the title sponsor of my ride. They have partnered with Student Veterans of America and actually donated $20,000 to this bike ride. So the big sponsors were the VFW, and also George Washington University was another title sponsor. And Going to the VFW posts was an amazing experience because I was able to talk to veterans of the Vietnam era, of the Korean War, and also World War II. And one of the things that we want to do is obviously link up with these different generations of veterans, because I personally feel it's extremely important for us all to share our stories. And the reason for that is because I see public policy being shaped by what I would call a public discourse. So we want to talk about these things, we want to share our stories so that we can really influence public policy. And public policy needs to work for us as veterans. So that was a large part of this mission.
All right, okay. And you wound up in Washington, D.C.
I did. I wound up in Washington, D.C. on August 5th, and Patrick was there with a whole bunch of our Student Veterans Association members.
I saw some of the pictures.
Yes, Ray Mollison, who's our current president, he rode with me from Fredericksburg, Virginia. I rode to Fredericksburg, met a group of riders, and then a group of 6 other riders rode with me right into the Capitol building, where we ended at the Lincoln Memorial. And MTVU was there, who also did some mini segments on the ride, and we had a big reception at the National Veterans Center, which is located on the George Washington University campus.
Wow. Wow. So Pat, you were there when she arrived, and what was that like?
It was pretty amazing. You know, we had kept in touch with Kiertsen, you know, throughout the entire ride from before she left. We even sent her a little video from our group that played softball towards the end of the spring, well, over the summer. While she was on her ride, we sent that to her. So seeing her actually come in was a great experience. There was about 8 or 9 of us that made the total trip from here in Tampa area up to DC. We all road trips, so that was a fun experience in its own. But
You didn't ride bikes up there, did you?
No, that would have been, that probably took us about 2 months, because a lot of us don't ride that much.
I tried to get them to ride with me for the entire thing, but they said, no, that's all up to you. You have to do that.
We're just here for moral support. It was really cool. As many people that showed up from all over to congratulate her and bring her in it was really cool.
Great.
Yeah.
How did you get home?
I ended up staying in Washington, D.C. for about a week. I had some different meetings and hung out with some friends, and then I had to drive to where my parents live in Binghamton, New York, and I drove from there all the way to Florida. And people were like, did you ride your bike back to Florida? And I said, no. I was pretty shot at that point.
But you had your bike with you when
you
came back.
I did.
Yeah, on the back.
Yes.
So, well, that's amazing.
That's
amazing.
Thank you.
Pat, I want to shift to you a little bit and tell us a little bit. I've read, again, on the internet about some incentives that President Obama has talked about in all these different schools that are doing things for veterans. USF is a pioneer in that, and our local Polk State College also has a huge student veteran population. Tell us about maybe the transition between military service and what the Student Veterans Association can and does do for our young veterans.
I'll start with the transition. The transition is like any type of experience for anybody. It's going to be different, you know, for the person that's going through, especially the veteran. It's taking you from one extreme that you've gone through to another. Because most of us, like your stats had said, most of us are 24 years or older. That's a big, huge gap. You know, from most of us going right out of high school at 18, some of us 17 years old, and then coming to college at 24, 25, you know, you're being around those 18, 19-year-olds again. It's a bit of a transition. It's a lot to take. But with where the SVA comes in, it's huge. When you're in, you build a sense of camaraderie, a brotherhood, sisterhood. You live and die with, you know, your guys and your girls. So when you come on campus, it's a lot to take in. You feel a little overwhelmed. You kind of feel a little lost because you're not sure where to turn to. You know, the first stop for most of the colleges and universities is there's a veteran service office. So that's kind of where the hub of most veterans go, because they need to get their benefits processed. And that's where we've kind of co-located our USF SVA is right near the office because that's where the majority of our veterans and dependents and those using benefits come through. So that's where we start our outreach, and that's where we kind of show them, hey, we've got a group here. We help with that transition process because we're able to, give you the ins and outs of campus life, tell you which teachers to take, which ones, to avoid, places to eat on campus that are great, where the workout centers are, working out with us once a week, get involved with, like I had mentioned before, the softball tournaments through intramural on campus, and tell them where to do tutoring services and writing center. It's kind of like every type of resource, and especially been pushing VA healthcare benefits. Recently, we've noticed that a lot of the veterans on campus aren't even aware that they're eligible for 5 years of free healthcare once they leave the service. So it was kind of shocking when we were talking about that in one of our last meetings, and a lot of the veterans were like, "We get 5 years of free healthcare?" Yes, you do. So a lot of this information isn't being, sent out to these veterans before they leave the service. So that's one of our key goals, is to start really preaching, their healthcare benefits, and then also help them out with their education as well, with tutoring and kind of like a mentorship.
Let me ask you both a question dealing with the healthcare. When you get out, when you ETS'd and you got out, what was the information like that you received about benefits and things like that? Was it sketchy? Was it none? Was it, what was it?
You want me to take it? You got it.
When I left the service, I left in 2008. Things might be a little bit different, but it was a death by PowerPoint type of exiting interview, so to speak, and it was pretty useless, to be quite honest with you. So when you left and made that transition to the civilian world, you just kind of went, well, I guess I'll figure it out, but there weren't any services available. And that's where my motivation came from with all of the work that I do right now, is because I was deployed to Iraq when I was a junior in college at Binghamton University, and I came home to a campus environment where there was close to nothing. There were no services. We didn't have an Office of Veteran Services. We didn't have a peer-run organization. So the support services that we provide to vets on campus are vital for their success and vital for the transition as we get these students to graduation.
Okay.
My experience is just about the same. I came off active duty in 2010, and it was a 3-day course. It's mandatory for you to sign up for when you leave the service, and it's middle of an auditorium of about 300 people, anywhere from people that are EASing off active duty to DoD civilian contractors to retirees. So you have a multitude of people crammed into an auditorium, and it's like Kiertsen said, and this is 2010, they just, PowerPoint, it was just representative after representative from companies or from the VA, and they just kind of clicked through a PowerPoint, and they threw a bunch of books at you and said, here, good luck, out the door you go. Mm-hmm. I've actually looked into what's been going on recently, and I believe since 2011, 2012 timeframe, the DoD and military have kind of toned down the amount of information thrown at somebody in one day, and they've kind of tailored it towards career aspirations or goals. So when you go and talk with your career officer about getting out through your unit, they say, okay, do you want to do school? Do you want to do work? And depending on what your interests are at that time, they kind of tailor your getting out program towards that. So if you do school, then they have you sit down, I think it's 2 days, and you talk about VA education benefits, the ins and outs of that, what you're eligible for. And they always throw in healthcare benefits now. So they're coming around to where they're toning down how much information is thrown at you and kind of gearing it towards what your interests are so that you get the right information at the right time. And it's ever developing, so they're still making it better, but it's all through feedback and what they're getting from those getting out. So
okay,
it's getting better.
What you guys are doing is helping. Mm-hmm. It's helping the student vet, it's helping out processing and things like that. Mm-hmm. We are about out of time. Do you have any other things you want to mention before we close the show?
Well, I think I just want to say, our biggest motive here is visibility. So we want other student veterans and also administrators at university campuses to just take note that Student Veterans of America exists, the national organization, and that the local college campuses probably do have a peer-run Student Veterans organization, and if they don't, they can start one, and we have the resources that they can use to do that.
Okay, Pat?
My big thing is something that I've taken to heart since moving to the state of Florida back in 2011. In-state tuition for those using GI Bill benefits. There's 19 states in the greatest country in the world right now that have in-state tuition for veterans and those using benefits. I'm not sure why Florida, being the third largest veteran population, hasn't completed this, but it's a work in progress. It's back on the ballot, I believe, was just introduced here recently. So that is one of my big initiatives, and us as the SVA here at USF, along with the other chapters in the state of Florida, are going to be getting together, and we're going to be pushing out. I'm talking meetings, talking with anybody we can, sending letters. All I can ask is that the voters of no matter where they're at, if they see this, to really take a look at it and really think about, what are we really giving back to those that have served? Let's give them in-state tuition, because when you sign that document to join the military, it's the United States of America, not the United State of Florida, not the United State of Texas, Ohio, New York. It's all of them. So let's really be behind them and push this forward.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you for your service and for what you're doing. Again, these are two young people that are going to be our leaders and are our leaders now. And we thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I joined the service in 1969. I did my basic training and everything at Fort Gordon, Georgia. From there, I volunteered. I went to Vietnam. I spent 2 tours there. I extended while I was there, came back and went back again. And then from there, they sent me to Germany. I spent about 10 years in Germany. And from there, they sent me back stateside. I did my short tour I did in Turkey. I spent 6 months in Turkey. Then I came back to the States in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. No, I'm sorry. Went to Washington. I was with a mechanized infantry unit. I was communications, so I was with all the different services in the Army. And mechanized, and they switched us down to Fort Ord. And then our unit there got selected to be part of the multinational force, so we went to Sinai for the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. And we were stationed there for about 6 to 8 months. Came back stateside to Oklahoma, to the artillery unit. From there I went to Fort Ord, California. And there we were, there is where I spent the rest of my time, which was like the last 3 years. And towards the end of my 20 years in the service, I had back surgery there, and ended up getting not a medical discharge, but they gave me my retirement, 20 years of retirement. I was on like a convalescent leave or whatever throughout the rest of my 6 months I had left in the service, and then I retired from there and moved here to Lakeland, Florida, and I've been here ever since. I think my biggest one, when I was at Fort Ord, California, when our unit got selected to go to the Sinai, I thought that was quite interesting. And because again, I was in communications, so I was in charge of the floor shows and stuff like that. So I'd go to Israel to pick up a floor show and bring them back to the peninsula, and then another time I'd go to Egypt. I've seen the Pharaoh. I've been through the pyramids. I've taken a trip down the Nile, and I got to see a lot of things that I'll never see again. And the other interesting tour, of course, was Turkey. Completely different, all Muslim, all the ladies had their scarves over their face, and that was up in a mountaintop where I could see Mount Ararat, which was where supposedly Noah's Ark was found, up on top of this mountain. And we were way up, Snowed 9-10 months out of the year, but we had the munitions, and the Turkish had the weapons to fire the munitions. And since I was the communications, I was part of the. They did move the munitions out of Turkey, out of the spot I was at, and I was set up the communications to move these weapons, not weapons, but the ammo that goes in the weapons out of the country. And we had to keep communications with the bird all the way throughout the flight. And I think the military in Italy took over the communications until they got back stateside or wherever I don't even know where they went, but I'm not sure if this is all still declassified or not, because that was a pretty well classified thing that I was on there, and got to see a lot there. And every time we went off the detachment in a vehicle, like we had to go down to the airfield to pick up our food or whatever and drive it back up, we always there was always at the gate, there was a armed van full of Turkish army that would follow us into town and follow us back. And basically what that was, if we ran into troubles, because we were in the mountains and there was a lot of Turkish people out there. Matter of fact, at the bottom of my hill was a big stadium, outside stadium, and that's where they would hold the big trials for all their better word, I guess, just outlaws. They find out doing things, doing that, and they held their trial out there, everybody at one time. But it was basically that van was basically they opened up the back doors to it, and it was a machine gun crew. And so that was tight security there, but I enjoyed going to places like that. I rather be in the places like the stateside. The stateside was all. Stateside duty was just PT, cleaning up, what do you call that? Picking up cigarette butts and this, that, and that, and that's, we did our training, of course, and the training was good, but it was exciting. I did just over 20 years by the time I finally retired, and I enjoyed my service there throughout my entire career. I really did. I'll never see these places again in my life. And during that time, of course, I got to go to, when I was in Vietnam, one time, my first tour, I went to Japan. So I spent a couple of weeks in Japan. And then I went to Australia, the second tour, spent a couple of weeks there. I'll just never see the country again like this again. I'll never see it again.
In this month in history, December marks the 72nd anniversary of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. The raid on 7 December 1941 lasted just over an hour, left 3,000 Americans dead, and caused the United States and Britain to declare war on Japan the following day. We remember another significant event from World War II this month. The Battle of the Bulge began in Europe in December 1944. And while the Allied forces suffered some 77,000 casualties, German forces were left irredeemably weakened. Thank you to those veterans who bravely fought in this battle, including members of the Lakeland chapter of the Veterans of the Battle of the Bulge and my grandfather. That's all we have for this edition of Today's Veteran. Remember, for help and information regarding claims, benefits, and services available to veterans and their families, call the Veterans Service Office or log on to the Polk County website.